Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Grain Market Blast. This is our first one recording live and going out on Podbean, which I can never say correctly. Podbean. So hopefully this works well. We've done a few others on our other podcasts that we do. Hopefully Angie can join correctly. I've sent her a link. She's already there. Angie, can you hear me?
I can hear you if you can hear
Yes.
me.
Oh my God, it's already going swimmingly. So, right, in that case, we'll just pretend this is a normal show. So, welcome to the Grain Market Blast with myself and the goddess of grain herself, Angie Setzer, where Angie will be providing us with a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in agricultural markets. As usual, nothing discussed on this Spaces session. No, it's not Spaces session. Nothing discussed on the podcast. It's trading or investment advice or refers any kind of endorsement by me, myself, and Angie. Yeah, I hope everyone's had a great week. And what's been going on in grain markets yesterday?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
And that's the end of the show.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Welcome to the first one on Podbean, and that'll do it. So, it is. Happy Friday. Can't believe it's already the last Friday of September. And you may have said that, and I kind of spaced out. I'm not sure.
I tell you what, though.
I'm trying to figure out I'm on my computer with it, like my desktop, and I feel like I'm in a spaceship right now a little bit, but that might have been anyway.
So I tell you what, we do joke about how quickly the weeks, the days, the months have been going by, but it's the 26th of September.
Yes.
How is that possible?
I don't know, and I don't like it. I don't like it. I can tell you that much. So, but we're supposed to stay pretty warm, so that's good. And to be completely honest here, for us, as we work our way into the weekend and pretty much across the country, we are going to have harvest everywhere. It's going to be a crazy, crazy stretch. I actually looked at the forecast this morning and said out loud to myself, because I do that often, woo, next week's going to be busy. And Carl said, "What was that?" And I said, "Nothing." Like, it's not important. But yeah, so really this week, the biggest things that we've been watching as we wrap up the week, obviously, is what took place in Argentina to start the week.
Yes.
A lot of folks, I try to really, and that was kind of yesterday would have been probably the majority of the conversation that we had, because there's been a lot of anger or gnashing of teeth. I mean, you've really seen in agriculture, especially, like there was some really upset folks that, we're going to quote unquote, this is kind of like a paraphrasing of what I saw from farmers and industry groups, pretty much most of the week, but we're bailing out Argentina and we still are not getting, so they can have business with China, blah, blah, blah. And if that's not necessarily the case, the two things are mutually exclusive to a certain extent,
right?
Like the export tax holiday both of them were caused by the same thing.
Yeah.
Let's just be straight up. Like, the export tax holiday came into play because Argentina was experiencing what could only be described as a massive shit show in their economy.
Don't worry. I have checked. We can swear on Podbean.
Okay, good. I didn't even ask. I just went with it. But what they're experiencing was just a really bad time. Their currency had collapsed. There was a lot of talk that Milei was going to lose the next election, yada, yada, yada. And so, really they needed to be able to generate some income because the currency had collapsed, because their stocks and bonds were falling. And so that's where this export tax holiday came into play. Now, it seems important to point out, like, the farmers, I think, were really expecting this to kind of come into play and stay for a while. They were waiting to see $7 billion worth of farmer selling, or thought that would be what it would take, to get this loophole or this window to close. It wasn't that at all. Actually, you saw basically, and I'm still trying to understand it entirely. So if anyone wants to share with me some additional insight on the feel of the farmer in Argentina. But from what I'm gathering, it appears it was mostly large agribusinesses that took advantage of this, and basically, liquidated supplies into the export market without tax, and then just figured they'd buy it from the farmer later on cheaper. And that's what they're doing. And so I think, we kind of will have to see, of course, how the election plays out in a month and what all happens there and what the results are, but obviously, to have Bessent come in, which was not driven by the export tax holiday or any of that. That was driven because they were losing, who they considered one of their best partners, politically and economically in Latin America.
But this is it, right? So someone made a very good point on this. I think, what was it? The numbers at the moment, anyway, the number was 20 billion, right? That kind of quote unquote, again, I'm doing air quotes. I don't know why no one can see me. And someone, as a bailout, quote unquote, But someone made a very good point. When you think that, the US will probably recover, or say 15 of this will be probably paid back. It's unlikely that the full amount is. It never really is. But if you look at it from the viewpoint of it's $5 billion to basically keep in power a very friendly government, keep the communists away kind of thing, it's probably is money well spent if you look at it with that said. But again, time will tell.
Yeah, and we don't know. I mean, we may not spend anything if we being
exactly.
the U.S. Because if you saw the support come into play, support immediately changed sentiment. The U.S. support brought a surge back into the currency, basically, which is a 10% recovery in the peso in day one. Or maybe I just made that up. Sorry if I did.
Well,
but it's a pretty rapid recovery.
And you see it. You see this thing. It happens when these kind of situations occur. You get a central banker, or someone says, well, Draghi's famous comment, whatever it takes. Just by saying it means you don't have to follow through, because the market says, well, they are there as a backstop, therefore we might as well get in front of it.
Yeah, the Fed put, the central bank put.
There you
right?
go.
And so now we have the U.S. put underneath Argentina. And so this could make a big difference. We'll see what the election, if the election comes in and Milei is a strong, if he's able to see a pretty strong showing, in all of these things, and basically I don't think they'll have to spend much. Now you might see U.S. investment and some of these other things that they're kind of pushing towards. And I would imagine that we're working towards some sort of deal that involves, rare earth minerals or something. You know what I mean?
There'll be some other stuff.
Yeah. On the backside that we're going to put together. And so, it's going to be something that we have to watch. But I really want to make sure that in agriculture, we aren't talking down another nation's farmers or speaking poorly of something that their government is doing, and tying it to our government, because really it's not. They didn't write. It's not like we wrote a $20 billion check to Argentina and sent it down there, and that facilitated them being able to sell beans into China. So we just have to make sure that we're aware of, and I was really disappointed, and I'm not trying to call anyone out, but in the American Soybean Association, because immediately they, they just made the whole entire thing even messier, because it's so complicated. And so it just kind of created this angst that didn't need to be there. But anyway, the loophole closed, and the Argentine farmer is now getting $6.50 for their soybeans again. So everyone should be happy. But in reality, that was kind of sarcastic. The last little, everyone should be happy, because obviously they aren't. In reality, though, what just happened is, Milei basically opened the door to never. You are going to see exceptionally slow soybean sales until they completely drop these taxes. And so with the support from the U.S., if the election is positive, some of these other things, then you could see it happen. But obviously now you've got an even more disgruntled Argentine farmer. And there's a lot of talk that they're just going to continue to cut back on soybean acres, which would make a really interesting dynamic in the year ahead. Simply because if they were to significantly cut back on soybean acres, they still have a pretty large crush industry, and they're going to have to supply that in some way, shape, or form. And so there's just a lot of stuff that's still happening in Argentina that we're going to want to watch, that'll obviously have impact on grain flow. But now, this whole entire idea that Argentina is going to completely replace the U.S., or you're going to see this surge in whatever, probably not. Pump the brakes on that one. Point number 2, what did I talk about? Oh, demand thing. And so I'm like, what was the next one? There's just so many things. Obviously, we're going to continue to watch, what is going on with demand as a whole. And there's a lot of conversation amongst the industry, or in the industry, that demand is overstated for corn, for new crop. I kind of tweeted about that this morning, saying folks talked about corn demand being overstated last year, again saying it's overstated this year. And one of these years they'll be right if they just keep saying it. But I think we have to be really careful. Like, a lot of folks are looking at percentage of animals on feed, the hogs on feed, the hogs and pigs report or whatever came out yesterday. It showed 2% less than what folks were thinking. Obviously cattle on feed has been pretty light, but it's important to kind of remind folks too, first off, feed and residual is heavily, residual plays a component in that, and that is a part of production. Basically for every bushel the USDA produces, they take, I think, a third of it and throw it out, because they figure that it probably is going to disappear in one way, shape, or form, which makes sense. Secondly, we have a really, really cheap corn. And so I work with a handful of hog feeders, in the Eastern Corn Belt here. And I can tell you that we are not backing off on, the bushels of corn that they're feeding. As a matter of fact, they're increasing them because they're consistent, quality's been decent, the feed products are there, and so could we have some overstatement of feed and residual that needs to come down? Does that category need to be reduced? Yes, if production gets reduced, that's going to be reduced, plain and simple. But the folks that are talking about poor exports, I saw someone this week mention that we had a significant amount of old crop corn rolled forward more than usual. No, 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 girl, it doesn't take much to just go back a year and pull up what actually happened. We had less corn rolled forward at the end of this year than we
If
did.
in doubt, zoom out.
Yes, I mean, come on. It isn't that hard to look up data for a year. Now we just make statements anymore and we're just like, well, no one's going to check it. So what difference does it make? And so we've got some pretty solid demand, and we'll continue to see pretty solid demand. Carl always says, and it's from his old days, working with cattle and some of those other things, like you feed expensive corn with a teaspoon, you feed cheap corn with the scoop shovel. And so that's where we're at. We're feeding corn with the scoop shovel still, whether you want to admit it or not. We're exporting the heck out of it. It's the largest corn export book that we've had on record, even exceeding when China came in after phase one. And ethanol margins are some of the best margins we've seen for this time of year in the last couple of years. And so just be really, really careful with this whole entire concept that demand is super poor. The same could be said for soybeans. There's a whole lot of conversation about, oh my gosh, if China doesn't show up this, if China doesn't show up that. Well, we're completely ignoring the fact that we have almost 300 million bushels of additional crush demand in the Western Corn Belt, the area that is being most directly impacted by the lack of China business. In addition, I just mentioned we have the largest corn book on record. And so the bulk of what is going to happen this year is going to be kind of opposite of what we would typically see. In a traditional year, we ship 300 million bushels of soybeans out in the October-November time period. This year, that's probably going to be replaced by corn. And so a lot of folks are having a really hard time wrapping their mind around how the logistics of all of this works, especially with it being so different. But it's going to be fun to watch because we've got 2 weeks of wide open weather and you better figure it out. If you're a merchandiser and you haven't figured out how you're planning on using your space yet, Godspeed and maybe call me because we need to talk through that with someone at this point.
I was about to say, I know someone you should be calling, and she's on here right now.
Yeah, we need to be walking through them logistics for you real quick, or just empty out the garage and drop some soybeans in there. Lastly,
it's one of those, when crude is really, really on its knees, and everyone's like, just take the water out of the swimming pool, fill up what you can.
Exactly. Yeah. Put it in your bathtub. Do what you got to do. That's where we're at with soybeans at this point. If you don't have a place, if you don't have a bin, and you have a barn, you better be thinking about it because it's probably going to pay. But in any event, looking into the weekend, hold on to your butts. Like I would not want to be short wheat, corn, or really anything necessarily. And they don't care. There's corn's down 6 cents or wheat's down 6 cents.
I was about to say, just as we went on air, I got my price alert from CME, which is a really handy tool. It's like people sign up to the CME, it's all free, etc. You just get your price alerts and a load of decent insights from them. But I think it's just down 1% as we came on air.
Yeah. She's not feeling fresh on a Friday, that's for sure. And so that tells you why I just trade physical grain and don't manage a hedge fund, apparently.
Cash for futures for show, cash for dough. We keep saying that.
Yeah, except for maybe I'm on the opposite side for now. But yeah, I'd be a little nervous. I actually had someone message me last night and say, is this really bullish for wheat with these drones? And I'm like, not alone, but the combination of all of this could be the biggest thing that I'm watching that I think is huge is, we've seen Ukraine begin to attack, oil, the export facilities, the ports, the hubs, some of these other things. And that part just makes me a little bit nervous simply because there had been a bit of a gentleman's agreement, could we say?
Yeah.
It seemed like we weren't touching the export stuff, but now obviously we are, at least the crude side of things. Sorry, my dog, if you can hear him, I apologize, but he won't shut up. So we got to watch that because I think that opens the door to Russia coming into Ukraine. And so we saw something this morning from ASAP Agri, I think it was. I hope I don't I hope I don't misspeak on who the quote was from. But in any event, they had mentioned, yep, it was, that Spain is turning away from Ukrainian corn. They're coming to the US, which is a rare sort of thing to see. Typically, Spain would be a big Ukraine corn buyer or a big, Brazil corn buyer, but obviously Brazil isn't as competitive as the US for one. And then, Ukraine there's worry, right? If you're a buyer of grain and you're going to need supply eventually, are you really going to book it in the deferred time period from someone who may not have a port?
This is it, right? It comes down to counterparty risk. You have from Ukraine at the moment, you have got that counterparty risk that they might not be able to deliver.
Yes. And that's huge. And so that's what you're seeing. Competition coming from the US has established itself very well in Spain, both in terms of price and quality. And so they don't see a greater appetite for Ukrainian corn until prices are at a clear advantage. And this was a general director of Spain's Feed Industry Association or whatever. And so, we're going to continue to see strong US demand. And a lot of it's going to be coming from the uncertainty that surrounds, our competition in Ukraine, the fact that Brazil continues to see their price rise. And now that we've removed the export tax holiday, the Argentina farmer is not going to be in a big hurry. Though next year they're going to have a bigger crop. So that's a conversation we'll have spring. Beyond that, though, we'll just see what happens over the weekend with Russia and Ukraine and all of that. How does this all play out? Just keep your head on a swivel that way. Next week will be a big harvest week, absolutely huge harvest week for the most part. And then we get the Tuesday quarterly stocks number and that'll be it. It'll be a big week next week, at least in the start. We'll at least be able to get that 500-pound gorilla that is everyone's
right. Yes.
Oh, quarterly stocks could be higher. We'll get that out of the room.
Awesome. Well, Angie, thank you so much. Listeners, I appreciate that a lot of people that normally listen to us live on Spaces are probably going like, where the hell are they? But we're thinking the medium long term on this. We're trying to make this as easy as possible to get the good quality. Well, I say the good quality, the amazing quality content that we do put together. Well, Angie puts together. I just sit here and listen out onto all the different podcast players. So do bear with us. It should be seamless. And also it just makes it so much easier for people to play these back via Apple and Spotify and whatnot. But Angie, again, thank you so much as always for another incredible week. Listeners, thank you so much as usual. I know I always say it, but we really do mean it. Whatever you're doing today and the weekend, have a great one. Stay safe. Look after yourselves. Much love. We'll see you all on Monday. Goodbye.
Have a good one, guys.